Welcome to Bent Souls. You being here right now is no accident. It's divine. Before we begin today's story, I want to ask you something important. Where are you watching from? Take a second, drop your city, your country, your heart location in the comments below, because when you do, it reminds us that this community is real, it's alive, and it stretches across oceans and time zones. That simple gesture? It keeps us going. And if stories like this, ones that speak to your spirit, that carry raw emotion and truth, if they matter to you, please click the like button and hit subscribe. That's not just support, that's fuel. It's the reason we keep showing up, bringing you stories that stay long after the screen fades to black. Now, before we step into this one, let's pause. Take a deep breath with me. May peace quiet your thoughts. May clarity find its way to the corners of your heart that have been searched, and may this story remind you that even in your messiest, most unpredictable moments, love might still be on its way. Here we go. Her name was Anna, and on the day, she was supposed to become someone's wife. She felt like she was being buried alive, not in dirt, not in grief, but in silk, lace, and lies. The wedding was everything they said a wedding should be: expensive, grand, prestigious. The kind that earned headlines in local magazines and whispered praises from distant relatives. The kind where the flowers alone could feed a hungry village. The kind where the bride was a symbol, not a person. Her dress had been flown in from Paris. Custom-made, handmade. They said it cost more than some people's houses. And yet, as she stood there wearing it, Anna had never felt more invisible. She looked beautiful on the outside, but inside, something was unraveling. The guest list was curated like an awards show, every handshake, every seat, every wineglass calculated for status. Her parents' smiles were wide and stiff, like masks they'd been wearing for years. And the man waiting at the altar was everything they wanted him to be: powerful, connected, a walking bank account with teeth. A man who didn't blink when he spoke in numbers. A man who had shaken more hands in boardrooms than hearts in real life. He was polished, respected, and cold. Cold like the diamond on Anna's finger. Cold like the silence between them when the doors closed and no one was watching. But not once had Anna ever chosen him. She hadn't chosen any of it. She was the daughter of a once promising political figure whose career had slowly crumbled under pressure and debt. Whispers of scandal had followed their family name for years. The kind of scandal that doesn't need proof to stain a reputation, just the right voices in the wrong rooms. And so this wedding, it was more than a celebration, it was a transaction, a merger, a rescue, a marriage meant to buy back relevance, to keep their family name alive. She wasn't marrying a man, she was marrying a bailout. Anna's heart wasn't part of the deal, her opinions, never requested, her dreams, silenced in exchange for dresses and diamonds. They called it tradition, they called it legacy. But Anna knew the truth. It was a leash wrapped in lace. As she sat in the bridal suite, the air thick with perfume and pressure, she stared into the mirror, not recognizing the woman staring back. Her makeup was flawless, her hair pinned like royalty. Around her, assistants whispered and moved quickly, making sure every detail was perfect. Her mother hovered in the corner, eyes sharp, lips tighter than the corset wrapped around Anna's waist. "Smile," someone said. "Just one more picture." Anna nodded. Her lips curled, but her eyes didn't follow, and in that quiet moment, something inside her cracked. Something deep, something sacred. The part of her that had been quiet for too long suddenly spoke, not with words, but with motion. She stood up, tore off the veil, dropped the bouquet, and without a single word, she walked barefoot toward the exit. No hesitation, no second guessing, just raw, desperate instinct. Down the corridor she went, passing startled workers and confused caterers. They called out her name, but she didn't look back. The sound of violin music floated through the air like a cruel lullaby, reminding her of what she was leaving behind. She didn't care. Every step she took down that hallway felt like a breath of air she hadn't had in years. The hallway narrowed, the walls felt like they were closing in, but her pace quickened. And then, she found it. A side exit. A red emergency sign flickering overhead like a warning. She pushed the door open, and the world changed. Cold rain slapped her face. The wind tore through her hair, and for the first time in a long time, Anna felt alive. The sky was gray. The pavement was wet. Her dress, once pristine, now dragged behind her, soaked and ruined. And yet, she smiled. Because that rain, that chaos, it was hers. No one told her where to go. No one handed her a script. She was just a girl, barefoot in a city too big for her, running from everything she was told to accept. And that was enough. She didn't know what came next. She didn't have a plan. She didn't even have a phone. But for the first time, she wasn't surviving for anyone else. She was choosing herself. People passed by her, confused and curious. A woman, in a wedding dress, drenched in rain, with mascara running down her cheeks. But she didn't stop. She didn't flinch. She didn't hide. Because this wasn't shame. This was freedom. And it was beautiful. In that moment, Anna realized something powerful. Sometimes, the bravest thing you'll ever do isn't standing at the altar. It's walking away from it. Sometimes, freedom looks like a broken heel and a soaked dress. Sometimes, your first breath as your true self feels like wind on your face, and strangers not knowing your name. And sometimes, your new life begins at the exact moment people think you've ruined it. Anna didn't ruin anything. She saved herself. And even though she didn't know what she was running toward, she knew exactly what she was running from. Obedience. Silence. A lifetime of pretending. And that was enough to keep running. Into the unknown. Into the city. Into the next chapter of a story that wasn't written for her, but would now be written by her. Sometimes, life throws you into moments that feel like accidents, but end up being the turning points you never saw coming. And sometimes, it only takes one decision, just one, made in the heat of emotion to reroute your whole story. Anna had no plan, no purse, no phone, no map leading her to healing or safety. All she had was a wedding dress clinging to her skin in the rain, and a heart that had taken too many blows in silence. She wandered, slow at first, her bare feet hitting wet pavement, her breath rising like fog in the night air. Everything around her looked blurred. Streetlights stretching into long golden streaks, the city moving around her as if she wasn't part of it. She could hear the sound of her own breathing louder than the city's noise. It was strange how you could feel so invisible in a place so alive. And then she saw him, just 2 blocks away from the ballroom she had escaped. Tucked between iron fences and overgrown bushes, there was a city park. Small, forgotten, quiet. And beneath the glow of a crooked street lamp, sat a man, alone, still, like the world had stopped spinning around him, and he didn't care. His hoodie was pulled low over his head, his shoulders hunched, one foot rested on the bench, his arm draped across the back like he had been there for hours. He wasn't watching the rain, he was watching the world disappear, and somehow, that stillness called to her. There was something about him that felt untouched by the noise, something calm, something real. She didn't think, she didn't calculate. Her legs moved before her mind could stop them, carrying her across the street, through the gate, and right to where he sat. He didn't react, didn't flinch, didn't speak. And Anna, she didn't ask his name, she didn't explain her tears, or the wet lace clinging to her arms like shackles. She didn't tell him what she'd just done, or where she had come from. Instead, she leaned in, and kissed him. It wasn't a kiss full of passion. It wasn't some magical spark, or a romantic movie moment. It was raw, sudden, heavy, the kind of kiss that held too many emotions for one heart to carry. Grief, anger, relief, loneliness. It was messy, and broken, and completely uninvited. But he didn't pull away. He didn't scold her, or freeze, or push her off. He just let. And when her lips finally parted from his, and her chest rose in a breath she hadn't been able to take all day, he looked at her, not like she was crazy, not like she was dramatic. He looked at her like she was a person, like he saw the hurt on her face, and didn't run from it. Then, wordlessly, he stood, and without making it feel like a gesture or a moment, he took off his hoodie, and wrapped it around her shoulders, as if she were something fragile, something worth covering, something worth keeping warm. It was a small thing, simple, but to Anna, it felt like the first kindness she had been given, without expectation in years. They didn't speak, they didn't need to, and she stayed there with him, on that quiet bench, under the weight of the rain, and the sound of her own shattered expectations, not even knowing the full storm she had just walked into, because the man she kissed, he wasn't just anyone. His name was Cole Whitmore, CEO, billionaire, the heir to a fortune that stretched across continents. He was the son of a man who had once sat in Anna's living room, smiling with cold eyes, pretending kindness, while buying influence with money and control. He wasn't just rich, he was powerful. He wasn't just influential, he was dangerous, because his name held weight in rooms Anna would never be invited into. And he didn't just own businesses, he owned the very hotel ballroom Anna had just escaped from, the ballroom where she was supposed to give her life away, in exchange for security her father couldn't afford. But Anna, she didn't know any of that, not yet. All she knew was that in her moment of breakdown, she kissed a stranger, and that stranger didn't ask questions. He didn't take advantage. He didn't disappear. He simply gave her warmth, and silence, and space. That was the moment everything started to shift. Because Cole, he hadn't planned to be there either. He hadn't planned to sit on that bench, alone, watching the city fall asleep. He hadn't planned to witness a girl in a wedding dress walk into the rain like a ghost, searching for herself. But the truth is, he was hiding too. Cole had built his life on control, on calculated risks, contracts, strategy, silence, raised by a father who taught him early that emotions were weaknesses, and vulnerability was something you only showed to get what you wanted. From the outside, Cole was untouchable, polished, commanding, the kind of man who could negotiate multi-million-dollar deals before lunch and leave a room without being questioned. But on the inside, he was exhausted from pretending, exhausted from being the version of himself the world respected, but never truly knew, exhausted from being a man everyone feared, but no one really loved. That night, he didn't want to go home. He didn't want to answer another email or shake another hand. He just wanted to be somewhere the world didn't expect anything from him. And then, Anna appeared, soaked, shivering, eyes wild, and beautiful and hurt. And then, out of nowhere, she kissed him. Not because he was Cole Whitmore, not because of his name or his title or his money. She kissed him like he was a safe place in a storm, like she had finally found one moment that didn't belong to anyone else but her. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel empty. He felt seen, and that terrified him more than he could admit. So he didn't say anything. He just gave her the only thing he had in that moment, his hoodie, and he let her sit there beside him, quietly breathing through whatever it was she was running from. He didn't know her name, didn't know her past, didn't know that she was supposed to be married right now, wearing that same dress in front of hundreds of people who didn't really know her either. He just knew she felt familiar, like someone who was also tired of pretending, like someone who was tired of being what everyone else needed her to be. So they sat, in silence, and the rain fell. The world kept turning, cars passed, lights blinked, somewhere, music played. But in that small pocket of time, on that forgotten park bench, two strangers shared something no one else would understand. Not love, not yet, but something just as rare, a moment of truth, unfiltered, unedited, unexplainable. That night would be the beginning of everything, even if neither of them knew it yet. That night marked a beginning, a subtle shift that would change the course of their lives in ways neither could predict. Days slipped by, soft and quiet, like the turning of pages in an old book. Anna found herself back in the small apartment she had once shared with her mother, a place filled with memories both tender and sharp. It was modest, humble, nothing like the grand halls and glittering chandeliers she had left behind. But here, the air was hers to breathe freely. She took a job at a little bookstore cafe tucked away on a forgotten corner of the city. The kind of place where the smell of old paper mingled with freshly brewed coffee,
where the hum of whispered conversations created a gentle backdrop to the pages turning. It wasn't much, but it paid just enough. It was quiet, simple, safe. Anna tried fiercely to forget the kiss, to pretend it hadn't meant anything.
That moment of recklessness in the rain, the warmth of a stranger's coat, she pushed it down deep, tucked it away behind the walls she had built around herself. Then, one day, he walked in. No hoodie this time, no hidden face. Just confidence wrapped in kindness, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He said he was just in the neighborhood, but there was a spark in his eyes that said otherwise, a quiet persistence that slowly, almost imperceptibly, became part of her days. And so he came back, again, and what started as brief encounters blossomed into routines, small moments stitched together by shared smiles and the comforting clink of coffee cups. Coffee turned into laughter, laughter turned into lingering looks. Walls, once rigid and unyielding, began to soften. Cracks appeared in the fortress Anna had built to protect her heart. In these moments she shared fragments of herself, stories whispered between shelves lined with forgotten novels. She spoke of her mother, who had passed away when she was just 17, leaving behind a silence filled with unspoken grief. She told him about her father, a man who saw her not as a daughter but as a business deal, a transaction to be negotiated and finalized, and about the piano tucked in the corner of the bookstore, where she would play when no one was watching, letting music fill the spaces that words could not. He listened, quietly, patiently, without pushing or prying. She didn't ask him much. He didn't offer much, but in the spaces between their words, in the comfortable silences, something genuine began to grow, something real, or at least, that's what she hoped. Even the softest moments can hold the weight of a sudden storm. One evening, the city was cloaked again in rain, the kind that blurs the edges of the world, making everything seem uncertain and fragile. Anna and Cole walked side by side beneath a single umbrella, sharing laughter that floated between the drops, light and easy. For a little while the past seemed distant, and the future was nothing but a quiet step ahead. But in that moment of shared warmth, a single flicker of light shattered the calm. Cole's phone buzzed, piercing through the quiet with its cold glow. She noticed before he could hide it, the name flashing on the screen, Whitmore Holdings, board meeting. Her breath caught. Whitmore, that name wasn't just a label, it was a history, a legacy, a reminder of power and control wrapped up in polished smiles and hidden demands. Her heart sank as the pieces clicked into place. The man she had come to trust, the stranger she kissed in the rain, was not who he had seemed. She turned to him, eyes searching. "Who are you really?" she asked, voice steady but heavy. Cole didn't lie, not exactly, but he had held back. With a quiet sigh he began to unfold the truth. The vast empire his family had built, the shadow his father cast over everything, the hotel where Anna's wedding was supposed to take place, the ties that bound him tighter than any contract, and how the kiss they shared was not just a chance meeting, it meant more, much more. But to Anna, this wasn't just a secret revealed, it was a betrayal, because in her world, men like Cole didn't appear by accident. They came with intentions, plans, expectations. And she wasn't willing to be anyone's pawn. So, without another word, she turned her back on him. She walked away, leaving behind not only the man but the fragile hope she had started to build. Her footsteps echoed louder than the rain, carrying with them the weight of broken trust. And in that distance between them, a quiet storm began to rage. Sometimes, silence speaks louder than any storm. It's in the quiet moments, those long nights, when the world fades to shadows, that the true weight of loss settles in. And for Anna, that silence was deafening. After the truth shattered the fragile hope she had held on to, everything she once clung to began to slip through her fingers like grains of sand. The music, once her refuge, became a distant memory. The piano, her faithful companion through years of pain and dreams, sat untouched, gathering dust in the corner of her small apartment. Each evening, as the city lights blinked alive below her window, Anna found herself staring out into a world that no longer felt like hers. The lights twinkled like ghosts, reminders of a life she had tried so hard to escape, but now seemed to haunt her every step. She had trusted him. She had opened a door she'd long kept closed, daring to believe that maybe, just maybe, this stranger who had offered kindness in the rain was different. But trust, she learned once again, was a fragile thing. Easily broken, even more difficult to rebuild. She let him in, and like the others before him, he wore a mask, a carefully constructed facade, designed to protect himself from a world that demanded perfection. But in doing so, it only pushed her further away, leaving her alone with the echoes of what could have. Her smile faded, replaced by a guarded expression that no one dared to pierce. Her laughter, once bright and genuine, became rare and hollow. She stopped sharing her dreams and fears, locking them away in a place even she could no longer find. Meanwhile, far above the city streets, Cole sat alone in his penthouse, a towering monument to wealth and power. The room gleamed with opulence. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the sprawling skyline, crystal chandeliers cast shimmering reflections, and walls adorned with priceless art whispered tales of legacy and success. But despite the luxury that surrounded him, the silence was heavier than any gold or glass. The penthouse felt vast and empty without Anna. His empire, built on calculated decisions and iron will, could not fill the hollow ache that grew inside. Money couldn't buy back the moments lost. Power couldn't erase the mistakes made. Cole was trapped in a world where every move was scrutinized, every emotion measured and hidden. The man who seemed to have it all was, in truth, just as lost as the woman he had kissed in the rain. The distance between them grew, not just in miles, but in walls built from fear, pride, and broken trust. A storm brewed in the quiet spaces where words were left unsaid and hearts remained guarded. Anna's world had grown smaller, confined to the shadows of what she thought she wanted and the reality she faced. Cole's world had grown colder, filled with success but starved of connection. And yet, somewhere deep beneath the silence and pain, the threads of their story were far from severed. Because sometimes, the hardest battles are fought in the spaces between love and loss. Sometimes, the quietest storms carry the promise of change. And sometimes, when two souls are brave enough to face their truths, even the deepest wounds can begin to heal. 2 weeks had passed since that rainy evening, when everything changed. The kiss, the truth, the heartbreak. 2 weeks of silence. 2 weeks of questions unanswered. 2 weeks where the space between Anna and Cole felt as wide and cold as the night sky. In those days, Anna found herself retreating further into the quiet corners of her life, trying to piece together the fragments of trust that had shattered beneath her feet. She focused on the bookstore, the comfort of worn pages, and the soft echo of her footsteps on the wooden floor. But no matter how busy she kept herself, the absence of closure lingered like a ghost. Meanwhile, Cole wrestled with his own storm. His world of glass towers and polished boardrooms was a far cry from the simple bookstore where Anna now lived. Her life, but every plan, every meeting, every deal seemed hollow, without the possibility of healing the wound his absence had caused. He needed to reach her, not with grand declarations or promises he wasn't sure he could keep, but with something tangible, something that said, "I see you, I hear you, I am sorry." And so he thought of sending a letter. It wasn't written in a lavish office. It wasn't dictated to assistants or polished by PR teams. It was written in a small room, late at night, where vulnerability outweighed power. Cole put pen to paper, pouring his heart into words he couldn't say aloud. Words that laid bare the man behind the mask, the man who had loved quietly, imperfectly, and feared losing the one person who saw him beyond his fortune. The letter was simple, handwritten, unadorned, but inside its folds was a world of meaning. When Anna found it among the pile of bills and advertisements, the envelope stood out like a beacon. The words for Anna were written in an elegant script that somehow felt both distant and intimate, like a secret meant only for her. Her hands trembled as she opened it, afraid to hope but unable to resist. The certificate inside was not just paper, it was a promise, a foundation established in her mother's name, a tribute to the woman who had nurtured Anna's love for music and dreamed of a life where voices like hers could soar free. The foundation promised to fund music scholarships for girls who had no voice, no stage, No chance to be heard. Girls like Anna once was. Tears welled in her eyes, not from sorrow, but from the weight of what this meant. Beneath the certificate, the note awaited. She read it slowly, each sentence a balm and a challenge. You reminded me that there's more to life than boardrooms and bloodlines. The acknowledgement of her impact struck her deeply, the realization that she had touched a man who had known only power and control. I didn't want you to fall for Cole Whitmore, I just wanted you to see me, the me that still believes in something real, an admission of vulnerability, of a desire to be known beyond the name and the money. If I broke your trust, I'll carry that. A confession that regret was real and heavy, but if you ever play again, know that every note matters, just like you do. A plea for her to reclaim her voice and her worth, no matter the past. Anna held the letter to her chest, letting the words sink deep. For the first time in weeks, hope flickered within her, a fragile, trembling hope that healing was possible. The letter was more than an apology. It was an olive branch extended across a canyon of pain. It was a reminder that beneath mistakes and misunderstandings, people could still choose to believe in each other. And for Anna, it was a call to remember who she was, not the daughter caught in deals, not the bride who ran, but the woman with a song still inside her waiting to be sung. She folded the letter carefully, placing it next to the certificate on her small desk. For hours, she sat in quiet reflection, the weight of the moment settling around her like a soft blanket. Tears came, not from sadness, but from the bittersweet recognition of how far she had come, and how far she still had to go. That night, the music inside her stirred once more, and with it, the possibility of a new beginning. Sometimes, the most powerful moments happen when no one else is watching, when the world is quiet, and the night holds its breath. That letter, so simple, so raw, lay heavy on Anna's small wooden desk. It was more than just a note, it was a lifeline thrown across a sea of pain, an invitation to step back into a world she'd been too afraid to face. For hours, she sat still staring at the worn paper, tracing the inked words with trembling fingers. Her mind replayed every moment that had brought her here, the stolen kiss, the betrayal, the silence, and now, this fragile hope. That night, the city whispered soft goodbyes to the day. The streets glistened with fresh rain, street lamps flickered like fading stars, and somewhere, the distant hum of life slowed to a gentle pulse. Anna slipped quietly into the bookstore cafe, the bell above the door barely ringing. The familiar scent of old books and coffee wrapped around her like a warm embrace, a stark contrast to the cold outside. She moved toward the corner where the piano stood, its polished surface glowing faintly under the soft cafe lights. It had been months since she touched its keys, months since she let her music speak, when words could not. Her hands hovered uncertainly above the keys. The silence between her fingers was thick, heavy with fear and memory. But then, slowly, almost hesitantly, she pressed down. The first note was soft, fragile, a whisper in the stillness. Her fingers began to dance, weaving a melody that trembled with raw emotion, hope and heartbreak, courage and fear, loss and longing, all tangled in every chord. The music poured from her soul, spilling out everything she'd been holding inside, every tear she hadn't cried, every word she hadn't said, every dream she'd buried deep beneath the weight of pain. And outside, through the rain-speckled window, stood Cole. He watched her, soaked by the night's steady drizzle, standing silent and still, a shadow against the glow of the city lights. He didn't come in, he didn't call her name, he didn't break the fragile spell she was weaving. He just listened, like he had the very first time. Her song was not just music, it was a confession, a healing, a hope. When the last note faded, the air hung thick with meaning. Anna looked up, her eyes searching through the glass. Their gazes met, clear, open, stripped of pretense. No masks, no secrets, just two souls laid bare. And in that moment, something shifted. A story once torn and fractured began to mend. One note, one look, one fragile step at a time. Because sometimes the greatest acts of love aren't shouted or declared. Sometimes they're played softly, in the quiet moments no one else sees. Sometimes they're found in the eyes of a stranger standing in the rain, watching. And for Anna and Cole, that night was more than a return. It was a rebirth, a promise that no matter how deep the wounds, healing could begin. A story still unfinished, waiting to be written by two hearts willing to believe. Sometimes, love isn't the story we expect. It doesn't always come wrapped in perfect moments or fairy tale endings. Sometimes love is quiet. It's a stranger in a hoodie who hands you a jacket on a rainy night, not because they have to, but because they choose to. It's imperfect, messy, and raw. It may break your heart before it mends it, but real love stays. It lingers when the world wants it to leave. It holds on when it's not easy. It's the quiet strength beneath the chaos. And often the very thing you ran from, the fear you tried to hide, leads you not to safety or perfection, but to something far greater. True. Thank you for sharing this moment with us, for opening your heart to a story that isn't just told, but felt. If these words touched you, if Anna's journey stirred something deep inside, don't let this feeling fade. Like this video, let it be a sign that you believe in hope, courage, and new beginnings. Comment below, tell us what moved you most, or share a part of your own story. Your voice matters here, and if you haven't already, subscribe now, because Bent Souls isn't just a channel, it's a sanctuary, a place where stories heal, hearts connect, and every voice is valued. Join our family of listeners and dreamers. Together, we'll find light in the darkest moments. We'll see you again in the next story. Until then, stay grounded, stay hopeful, and above all, never stop believing in the power of love.